You are watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Breaking news as we come on the air. Hurricane Helene shifting east of Tallahassee. It could make landfall north of Cedar Key, Florida within the next 3 to 4 hours. Now a Category 3 storm with sustained winds up to 120 miles per hour. It is officially a major hurricane, and as it remains over the water, it could continue to grow stronger before it hits. And we're giving you a live look over the port of St. Petersburg, and you can really just see the waves crashing along the boardwalk there. It's getting very serious. The National Weather Service has warned residents of Florida's Big Bend that the storm surge could be up to 20 feet and quite unsurvivable, they say, in places. The Florida Peninsula also on tornado watch until at least 8 p.m. tonight. Megan Scarano is live in Panama City, Florida for us with the very latest. Megan.
We are here in Panama City Beach, Florida, and I can say that the rain has really picked up in about the last 30 minutes or so. All day long, it was a steady rain, but nothing too severe, nothing too heavy. But now that's changed, and to give you perspective, we're standing underneath the pier for some protection, and I'm not sure it's really doing any good. But just take a look at these waves. They are ginormous here on the coast, about 2 to 3 times higher than that we saw yesterday. And it's because of those worsening conditions that many residents aren't taking any chances. One woman tells us she just moved into a new home here in the area. While she's not new to Panama City, this is a new home, and unfortunately her neighbor told her that that area is prone to flooding.
We're just making sure that we don't get water in the house, so we're moving stuff up to the second floor right now just to be prepared. I do not have flood insurance, so therefore, and I just went through the tornado and I just finished remodeling, so I don't want to have to deal with all that.
And she's not the only resident to prepare. So many people told us today that they remember the remnants of Michael in 2018, and that's why they want to take this as seriously as they can.
And Megan, the eye of the storm is tracking east right now, east of Tallahassee and Panama City where you are. But with the immense size of this storm, what are you hearing about the concern of flooding and power outages where you are in the Panama City area?
There are definitely concerns of flooding. That's why that so many residents are using sandbags. That's why the city ran out of sandbags yesterday. And I will tell you an interesting story. There's so many people here on the beach still, even into tonight. But there was a woman parked up next to us at the pier, and I knocked on her window. I said, "Hi, how are you doing? We're looking to talk to some people." She told me that she is from Tallahassee and she came here to avoid the worst of the storm there. So even though it may not be getting the brunt of the storm here, it's still impacting residents around the Big Bend region of Florida.
All right, Panama City, Florida, that's where you are. Megan Scarano, thank you so much for that live report. And we are going to be following the breaking developments on Hurricane Helene throughout the night. You can stay up to date 24/7 on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. Tonight, federal prosecutors are revealing more about their case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Adams is charged with 5 counts, including soliciting bribes from Turkish officials for years, accepting luxury flights and gifts, and financial support for his mayoral campaign. In return, the mayor, prosecutors say, pressured city officials to get a Manhattan high-rise building opened in time for a visit from Turkey's president, despite not passing inspection.
As we allege, this was a multi-year scheme to buy favor with a single New York City politician on the rise, Eric Adams.
And I ask New Yorkers to wait to hear our defense before making any judgments. And I look forward to defending myself and defending the people of this city.
Mayor Adams says he's being targeted and that there's no case against him. He says he will not resign and will fight the charges. New tonight, Israel pressing on with its military campaigns in Gaza and Lebanon. Despite U.S. pressure for a ceasefire, Israeli strikes continue to target southern Lebanon and suspected Hezbollah hideouts in Beirut, while Hezbollah shows no signs of letting up its rocket campaign. Right now, Israel moving tanks north, indicating preparation of an expected ground invasion in Lebanon. This as tens of thousands of Lebanese civilians evacuating the hostilities find themselves homeless with little idea of where to go.
We tried to escape to Beirut, but there was no housing or anything. We hope that they open the borders so we can go to our people in Syria.
God knows best. Anywhere in God's land. Where can we go?
More than 600 people, including women and children, have been killed in Lebanon since Israel turned its sights north. It is unclear how many Hezbollah fighters are part of that number. Hezbollah also continues to fire rockets into Israel, though those have been widely intercepted. Israel has seemingly rejected a 21-day ceasefire floated by the United States to end the campaign there. It is unclear if Hezbollah was on board with that deal. U.S. officials say it's the only way to reach a lasting peace.
A diplomatic solution, not a military solution, is the only way to ensure that displaced civilians on both sides of the border can finally go back home.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the White House earlier today as the president announced additional aid to Ukraine that includes long-range munitions and F-16 pilot training. With the U.S. election now just 6 weeks away, the future of U.S. support for Ukraine hangs in the balance. The National News Desk's Atrel Nashar reports from Washington.
2.5 years into fighting Russia's invasion, Ukraine's leader expressing gratitude for America's help and pitching his plan for victory. Ukraine seeks permission from the U.S. to use long-range missiles against Russian bases launching attacks on eastern Ukraine. Now, President Biden isn't ready and may not ever grant that permission. Russian President Vladimir Putin just suggested Russia could use nuclear weapons against nations that participate in or support an attack on his country.
We're making it clear we stand with Ukraine now and in the future.
Zelensky is well aware that there will be a new administration at noon on January 20th, either a President Harris, who's expected to keep up U.S. support, or a President Trump, who's boasted a relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Of course, I would want that no matter who is elected, that Ukraine does not suffer.
Trump claims he can bring peace, but doesn't explain how.
We're stuck in that war. Unless I'm president, I'll get it done.
The former president now casting doubt on Ukraine's future as a nation.
You have a country that has been obliterated, not possible to be rebuilt. It'll take hundreds of years to rebuild it.
In an interview with The New Yorker, Zelensky says, "My feeling is that Trump doesn't really know how to stop the war, even if he might think he knows how." Zelensky said Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, is too radical. Referencing Vance's proposal to end the war that includes Ukraine giving up territory, Zelensky said, "Let Mr. Vance read up on the history of the Second World War, when a country was forced to give part of its territory to one particular person." Some Republicans rushing to Trump and Vance's defense by scrutinizing Zelensky's visit to a Scranton, Pennsylvania ammunition plant on Sunday alongside state Democratic officials. House Speaker Mike Johnson claims the visit amounted to election interference.
Now, the White House insists that it was business as usual and points out Zelensky traveled to Utah just 2 months ago and had meetings there with Republicans.
And Atra, on that additional aid the president just announced today, why is the timing of that so critical?
Well, part of this package includes roughly $5.5 billion in aid funding that the president announced today. And it's already been authorized by Congress, but it was set to expire at the end of the month. It's part of what we call the president's drawdown authority. So he can tap into the Pentagon stockpile, send existing weapons and equipment to Ukraine, and then that money pays for it to be replenished for American purposes. Now, the timing is believed to be intended to help extend resources to Ukraine if former President Trump wins in November and Washington's support for Ukraine dies down.
Yeah, the clock could be ticking. Atrel Nashar reporting out of D.C. for us. Thank you so much for that. The impacted train car with a styrene leak in Whitewater Township, Ohio, has been sealed, and the car has been moved to nearby Addiston. There's no longer a threat of explosion, and residents have been able to return to their homes. Authorities say the air and drinking water is safe to breathe and drink, but monitoring is going to continue. Authorities telling residents to wipe down all surfaces in their homes and to throw away any exposed food, including pet food that may have been left out over the last couple of days. At least one female resident has filed suit against the rail company, citing medical issues she experienced following the initial leak. And a 10th person has died in connection to the listeria outbreak from Boar's Head deli meats over the summer. The CDC also identified at least 2 more serious illnesses in their update and now says 59 people total from 19 states have been infected. The CDC says this is the largest listeria outbreak seen since 2011. Boar's Head permanently closed the processing plant in Virginia that was associated with the contamination earlier this month. Judges in a New York Court of Appeals now considering arguments they heard today in former President Donald Trump's request to overturn a civil fraud judgment that could cost him nearly $500 million. One attorney for Trump argued the case was just brought too late. The judges asked questions related to the scope of power given to Attorney General Letitia James. A ruling is unlikely to come before Election Day. Well, tens of thousands of port workers from Maine to Texas are set to go on strike Tuesday. If they walk off the job, the flow of a wide variety of goods could stop at almost all the cargo ports on the East and Gulf coasts. That could possibly drive up prices again. The International Longshoremen's Association, which represents 85,000 members, is reportedly asking for a $5 an hour raise per year over the 6-year contract. The U.S. Maritime Association, on the other end of the negotiating table, calls the union's demands unreasonable. Anytime now, an Alabama inmate will become the second known person to be executed by nitrogen hypoxia. A 30-hour execution window for Alan Eugene Miller began this morning. Miller has been on death row since the year 2000 for 3 1999 murders. The state tried to execute him by lethal injection 2 years ago, but couldn't access his veins. Critics compare nitrogen hypoxia to torture, but proponents say it's the most humane method available. 27 people have been indicted in a black market prescription drug selling scheme out of Puerto Rico, illegally bringing in nearly $21 million, according to prosecutors. Federal documents say since 2018, the defendants bought drugs from unlicensed wholesale distributors, misbranded them, and then sold them to pharmacy workers who then sold those to unsuspecting customers. Coming up, what came out of the first public hearing from the task force investigating the Trump assassination attempts? Then new details about the big changes coming to Southwest Airlines, when and how open seating is going away. Then the latest on suicide rates in the U.S. and the role of factors like mental health. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the National News Desk. We're giving you a live look over Tampa Bay, Florida right here, already feeling the impacts of Hurricane Helene, and you can just see what you can make out there. It's pretty blurry, but the wind is definitely picking up. You can see the trees really moving with some impact. It's very, very wet. Of course, Helene expected to make landfall there tonight, and we're going to be tracking it for you both on air and online. So stay with us right here at the National News Desk. The congressional task force charged with investigating multiple assassination attempts against former President Donald Trump held its first hearing today. As national correspondent Matt Gelka tells us, Congress wants to know why there were so many gaps in protection between the Secret Service and local authorities.
A 20-year-old with a week's notice figured it out and outsmarted and outmaneuvered the entire U.S. Secret Service, and that is a shame, and it's a stain on their agency.
The House task force probing the assassination attempts of Donald Trump heard from local law enforcement about the rally where the former president was nearly killed, while others were injured and one rallygoer lost his life. The hearing comes a day after a scathing Senate report highlighting multiple Secret Service failures. The House panel suggested that the blame fell mostly on the Secret Service and not the local agencies there in support.
Do you feel that the Secret Service adequately prepared you and your men for July 13th?
We were certainly prepared for the missions that they had given us. There were additional things, obviously, that probably needed covered, but they never asked us to do that.
A prominent problem lawmakers continue to bring up centers around a lack of clear communication at Trump's July rally between the Secret Service and other law enforcement. There were multiple instances where the shooter was spotted at the rally and was eventually engaged in the moments before the shooting, but the information wasn't clearly relayed.
Can you briefly talk a little bit about the Secret Service and whether or not you think they could hear you?
I do not believe they could hear us at all. They did not have a radio from us, and we did not have a radio from them. So, in the local command post, there was no way for us to hear any of the Secret Service radio traffic.
The Secret Service initially blamed local law enforcement in the immediate aftermath of the July shooting, but have since taken full responsibility. And the former president will officially return to Butler, Pennsylvania on October 5th, holding a rally and honoring his supporter that was killed back in July. For the National News Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
New jobless claims are at their lowest level in 4 months. Unemployment benefit applications dropped by 4,000 last week to 218,000. That number is lower than analysts expected. And mortgage rates, those are going in the right direction. Freddie Mac announcing today that the average rate on a 30-year mortgage fell from 6.09% to 6.08% last week. Might not seem like much, but it is the lowest we have seen in 2 years. And again, shows that things are headed in the right direction. New information out of Southwest Airlines today. The company giving the first details on the major changes coming next year. Southwest is going to adopt assigned seating beginning in the second half of next year. Passengers can still pick their seat if purchased early enough for an extra fee, or it will be assigned 1 day prior to the flight. Other changes coming include new red-eye flights available in late 2025 and 26. One thing that is not changing, their baggage policy. Southwest says bags fly free, so that is good news. Well, sending a letter is going to get a little more costly. The United States Postal Service said it will increase stamp prices 5 times in the next 3 years. Right now, first-class postage is 73 cents. Prices will start going up in July, then more each January and July after that until the end of 2027. The Postal Regulatory Commission does still need to approve those changes. In Cincinnati, the kickoff times for several local high school football games have been changed due to gun violence and ongoing threats in the area. Cincinnati's police chief says nearly 24 students have been arrested since just August in connection to violence in and around the school system's athletic stadiums. The district, citing the need to prioritize safety, has moved 6 games to different days or earlier start times so far. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We are taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Texas, where first responders are doing a first-of-its-kind training for emergency situations.
Officers from all over the region coming together for a first-of-its-kind training here in Uvalde.
There he is. Get him. Work your angle on him. Work your angle on him. Nice. All right. Suspect down. Suspect down. Call it out. Call it out.
3 days of training in this environment, prepping first responders for whatever comes their way.
We're able to do 11 scenarios in a virtual environment that logistically would take months to find the different facilities.
Dispatchers working with officers, working with medics, even working with the media at a simulated press conference.
Wine sales have been falling in California, according to the state's Farm Bureau. The market has been shrinking for nearly 3 years, and that could be taking a toll on winemakers. But one expert in Chico says her business has not been affected quite yet. Wine sales skyrocketing during the pandemic, and she thinks the decline could mean things are just going back to normal.
Mentioning how much people have bottled and slowing down in sales. The past few years since COVID, they've been selling out and increasing production. So a slowdown in sales may just mean that it's balancing out finally.
The largest population of gray whales swims right here along the west coast. During the winters, they spend time closer to Mexico. In the summer, many move to the north to feed near the Arctic. One smaller group feeds right here on the coast of Oregon. Researchers from Oregon State University have been observing these whales with drones for 7 years.
Usually they dive so deep that we lose sight of them from the drone, but these whales are feeding in water basically as deep as they are long.
The drones allowed researchers to understand their behaviors, and they found 8 different feeding behaviors that change depending on habitat, size, and age. Researchers say this study will help them protect these whales in the long run.
Coming up, suicide rates are at an all-time high. How one family is trying to turn the trend around. We'll be right back. National suicide rates remain at the highest level in history as of 2023. That's according to new government data. Just over 49,300 suicide deaths were reported. Higher depression rates, access to guns, and limited mental health services all contributed. The new data also shows suicide rates declined from 2018 to 2020, but increased again from 2020 to 2022. Medical reporter Liz Bonas shares the story of one family trying to turn these negative trends around.
Hey there, everybody. This is Chelsea. She was smart, funny, and sassy, and just 16 years old when she died by suicide. Well, there were warning signs. She was cutting. Chelsea's parents, Matt and Jennifer Westwood, say,
we were embarrassed to talk about it with our friends, and immediate family knew,
the struggles, but nobody else did.
Now, through Chelsea Ryan's annual Festival of Hope each year.
She passed on March 14th. We say that March 15th was the day that we chose hope.
Her family is not embarrassed to talk about it anymore. Their message is one that mental health specialists at Ohio's Linder Center of Hope say is the first step to preventing suicide, being vulnerable enough to ask for help.
Because it is vulnerable to acknowledge that I can't do this alone and to say, hey, can you help me out?
Lots of parents may need this kind of help, according to the CDC. The most recent report on suicide shows a person dies by suicide every 11 minutes. Guns are used in more than half of these deaths, followed by suffocation and poisoning.
I think we thought as parents that we had failed her and we weren't able to help her the way she needed it. So I think that's the biggest thing that I would like people, the parents especially, to know about is that don't be embarrassed, ask for help, talk about it. And we didn't in the beginning.
Just a reminder, if you or someone you love is struggling with suicidal thoughts, you can now call or text 988 24/7 for help right where you live. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Well, the start of the holiday shopping season is more than a month away, but we already know online spending is expected to break records. That's according to a new report out of Adobe Analytics. And shoppers, they are projected to spend, get this, $241 billion online this year. That's up 8%, by the way, from last year. More than half of online sales will be on electronics, apparel, furniture, and home goods. Sales analysts also project total retail sales, both in person and online, will grow around 3% during the last 3 months of the year. All right, that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. We do invite you to join us again for more coverage of our top stories, including Hurricane Helene as it makes landfall over Florida. I'm Amira David, and thank you so much for watching.